All right. Welcome back, everybody, to our latest episode of The Nest. That is the New England Sports Talk. We are down to one game remaining for the 2021 NFL season, and that is Super Bowl 56, which will take place next Sunday at SoFi Stadium between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams. The Bengals, of course, upset the Kansas City Chiefs 27-24 in overtime last Sunday at Arrowhead Stadium, and the Rams beat the San Francisco 49ers 20-17 at SoFi Stadium to set up this matchup, which really nobody saw coming at the start of the season. So we will discuss both games from last Sunday, discuss the Super Bowl matchup, and also touch upon some of the other topics, including the official retirement of quarterback Tom Brady and his snubbing of the Patriots from his initial farewell post, in addition to the lawsuit brought forth by Brian Flores against the National Football League. And joining me for today's episode are Anirban Chakraborty, Rohan Venkatesh, and John Talukdar. So guys, how's everyone doing?
Doing well.
One game left, right? This is it. It all comes down to this. There's a lot going on in the league, on the field, off the field. So we'll get to it all.
Yeah, it all comes down to one game. At the start of the season, I don't know who predicted the Bengals and Rams would be in the Super Bowl, but here we are, and looking forward to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely gonna be a great game. I think especially the Cincinnati Bengals have to be the bigger upset of like the two in reaching the Super Bowl. With Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, it's been really fun to watch that team grow, even as someone who's not necessarily a Cincinnati fan. And I also want to mention, I think I'm the only person on this panel who's called them for both of their games against Tennessee and against Kansas City. So just wanted to put that out there. Feeling pretty good about that.
We're gonna be looking. We're gonna be looking to see what your predictions are gonna be. And I did say last time on the episode that hey, if the Bengals somehow manage to win, then Anirban's gonna look like a genius. And so lo and behold, that is what ended up happening. So got to give that congratulations out there.
I appreciate it. I'm formulating right. Maybe by the end of this talk, I'll have some better clarity for our instructors, for our listeners on who's going to be winning the Super Bowl this year.
Exactly. And we will talk about the Super Bowl and the exciting matchups from last week. But before, let's just quickly touch upon the other topics. So first, obviously Tom Brady. So last weekend, it was reported by Adam Schefter that Tom Brady was going to retire. And we already kind of gave our tribute, so we're not going to repeat that. But then obviously on Tuesday, Brady himself officially told everyone that he is retiring. He posted on Instagram, but one thing was interesting on his Instagram post, and I guess on Twitter as well, and Facebook, and wherever else he posted it, he pretty much just talked about his time with Tampa. He didn't really mention anyone in New England until afterward, which I thought was not good. Obviously, people can say, yeah, he gave the farewell 2 years ago, but in my opinion, New England is where he kind of made his career. That's where he sort of became the legend he is today. So I thought it was kind of interesting that he didn't mention them at all until later. And I'm going to just say about this is both sides, and I'm talking about Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, the three of you better figure out some compromise and make sure you make amends, because we can't have this. Tom Brady is one of the biggest Boston icons in history, really, in sports history, he is. And
and Belichick and Kraft aren't. So we know who's bossier.
Well, Belichick is also one of the best coaches in Boston sports history too, right? He's up there with Red Auerbach. And really, who else is there besides Red Auerbach is Bill Belichick. Terry Francona, okay, maybe, but 2 World Series versus 6 Super Bowls. So Bill Belichick is he's up there among one of the greatest coaches in history, not just Boston history, just in history in general, right? So I don't know, these 3 people, and Robert Kraft, I would also argue, is one of the best owners. What he was able to assemble, he deserves a lot of credit for keeping that in sync for 20 years. So the 3 of these guys better sit it out and work out some compromise and some deal, because Tom Brady absolutely should be remembered as a New England Patriot going forward. Obviously what he did in Tampa is very impressive, but he's the Patriots is where he made his legacy and name. So these guys need to figure it out. Yeah, exactly.
Spent 10 times as long in New England as he did in Tampa.
I mean, he doesn't even mention Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft or any of his Patriots teammates until later on. Like, I mean, come on. Like, I know it didn't end well. Like, I know the Patriots didn't believe in you. They should have brought you back. But at the end of the day, Bill Belichick is the one who drafted you and gave you the chance to be the starter. So to me, I also think Tom Brady should have mentioned the Patriots. And I do hope going forward, he does sign that one-day contract and retires as a member of the Patriots officially, because that's where he belongs the most, right? Like, no one should remember him as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer the way they will as a Patriot.
I don't know. I don't know. I think I kind of disagree here because that team was built by and around Brady. Brady doesn't owe Belichick anything. That team, that dynasty,
you can't say
because of Brady.
Oh, I don't think you can say that. Well, how do you know that?
Because Brady's gone now, and the Patriots are far worse. I mean, yeah, I mean,
that's not like a direct one-to-one comparison. Like in 2001, would you have said that Brady was the only reason they were able to win that game when you consider that he was actually out for that AFC Championship game? So Drew Bledsoe actually beat Pittsburgh in 2001 in that AFC Championship game to get them to that Super Bowl against the Rams. So I don't know if you can just say that Brady doesn't owe Belichick anything, because I mean, Belichick was the one who gave him the chance and the opportunity to be the starter, right? Because there was actually a lot of
yes, but it was actually Brady who actually made those contributions on the field and brought those championships for the Patriots. So we should be giving credit where it actually belongs, to the guy who actually produced something on the field.
Yeah, we should. So that's why I'm saying all three of these guys need to figure it out, right? I'm not trying to say like that one guy does. This isn't going to be a debate about who's more important to the team. I'm just saying Brady owes Belichick at least an acknowledgement about the impact Belichick had on his career, which he didn't give. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I guess be careful for what you wish for, because I have a strange feeling that if he does speak out about that, it's not going to be good. But this is just my speculation.
I would say that in fairness to Brady, he did thank the Patriots, Kraft, and Belichick, like after the fact that, you know, there was a statement from Bill Belichick, there was a statement from Kraft, there was a statement from the Patriots organization. So he did thank them, like kind of in the end, but it took a bit of prodding. And of course, we all know that it didn't end very well. And I would say in New England, and now that he's officially retired, it didn't necessarily end that well in Tampa Bay either, right? So, you know, I understand why he thanked the Bucs, because it was the last team he played for, and he got pretty much what he wanted. But you know, like as Rowan mentioned, 2 years versus 20 years in New England, like it's unheard of for anybody to these days to be playing for one team for 2 decades straight, like, and then suddenly saying, oh, it's almost like as if what was it? Tampa Bay was, I don't want to say like a retirement home, but like he had a lot more fun there. I'll put it that way. You know, like with your wide receivers that he had the last 2 years, like the supporting cast he had. Of course, in 2019, it wasn't necessarily the case for most of that season. But you know, you can't really just judge 1 year, like Brady's last year in New England from 2019 to those of the so his 2 years down in Tampa. So I think eventually he got there, and like I said, he eventually got there in the end, and we all should be thankful for his contributions to New England sports.
Yeah, I mean, all of us are thankful, but I'm just saying.
If anything, Bill Belichick should be, and Kraft should be extra thankful, because Brady played at a steep discount to what he was actually worth as a player, and he stuck around because he wanted to be surrounded by good players on the Patriots. So he played at a steep discount and basically gave the ownership what amounted to a free ride, the best QB in the league for basically like pennies on the, like not pennies on the dollar, but maybe dimes on the dollar to what he could have fetched elsewhere. And I mean, eventually he had enough and went to Tampa, right? I mean, like, I don't exactly blame him for doing that, right? So I mean, if anything, it's the Pats ownership who should be thankful that Brady ever played on their team ever, and that he didn't leave, and that he gave them such steep discounts for so many years.
Yeah, I think this is interesting, right? Because I think those things don't have to be mutually exclusive personally, right? I think I think if we actually look at the reasons of Tom Brady really deciding to leave at the time and about kind of how he wanted the long-term contract that ended in 2019, it did seem like, and I think this has come out since then, most of that was kind of driven by Bill Belichick, kind of his decision that he did not want Tom Brady to have that kind of long-term deal until 45, and that Robert Kraft actually was perfectly fine with Tom Brady staying. I mean, if we read the book Dynasty and really any other reports, Robert Kraft enjoyed a really, really close personal relationship with Tom Brady that really transcended a professional player owner interaction. So I do think actually that it's not like the entire Patriots ownership was just, let's kick Brady out. I don't think that was ever the discussion. It was more really targeted to kind of the idea that Bill Belichick really felt like, it's high time that Tom Brady doesn't get the special treatment. Why, I'm the head coach. I should be making these decisions. I don't want like Robert Kraft to be interfering just because he likes Brady. But I do want to point out, right, that we all know Tom Brady is a really deliberate and careful guy with his posts and the way he talks. I mean, that's one thing that people have always appreciated, I guess, that he's not one of those guys who spontaneously tends to like rip people during press conferences or whatever. So you just have to keep in mind that like this is I think a pretty intentional, like you do have to think about that, like it's every word he types in that Instagram post is very intentional. So whether or not I feel like he responds after to whatever Bill and Robert say, I feel like that's kind of beside the point, because first of all, like you guys all said, he doesn't mention the team. Like he knows people are going to talk about it, and he didn't do it. The second thing is the photo he used for his retirement is of Tampa Bay beating, like at Gillette when they beat us earlier this season. I mean, again, that's an like that's you're telling me out of all of his 22 years, like he specifically chose that one. Like I think that's a pretty odd, like that kind of says it for itself. And I do feel a little like it doesn't leave a great taste in my mouth, And I'm saying that this doesn't have to be mutually exclusive with the fact that I'm very thankful for the 2 decades he spent here, all the stuff he won with us. I'm obviously very thankful for that. But I think at the same time that just makes it even just leaves a bad taste still, that this guy who we actually really cared about, who really brought us so much joy, doesn't seem to return kind of that kind of feeling toward us. And it's not just me, actually. I want to say that there's even an article, I think, by Jacob Kamenker when Brady first kind of released an Insta post talking about how Robert Kraft actually was apparently through like a temper tantrum when Tom Brady didn't actually mention the Patriots in his retirement post. Like, in fact, that Patriots executive office, he was like really angry. He was kind of shouting because, again, if you think, like, it's not just, there's a lot of people on media kind of making like, oh, Patriots fans just make it about themselves, let the man have his retirement. It's not just me. It's also like even a guy like Robert Kraft, who again viewed Brady like a son by any account, and he was really disappointed too that there was absolutely no shout out to any of them in the Instagram post, right? And again, you can say all you want, like Robert Kraft releases a statement, Tom Brady reacts with like a heart message. I mean, sure, like at that, like I said, he's a professional. He's not just gonna completely like diss them like that, but I think that still doesn't leave like a good taste in your mouth if you're a Patriots person, and I don't think that has to be mutually exclusive with at the same time being.
I think most Patriots supporters. I mean, the thing is also like Brady should also be careful about this a little bit because his biggest supporters are Patriots like supporters, right? At the end of the day, like I mean, because most of the country doesn't really like him as much. They might respect him because he is a great quarterback, but most of his like merchandise, most of the stuff he sells, it's really going to be geared towards people who are Patriots supporters, right? At the end of the day, and maybe some Tampa guys as well, obviously. But so I mean, by omitting just any mention of New England, his time there, he's kind of risking alienating like sort of that portion, a large segment of his potential customer base as well. So that's where he should be a little bit careful as well. Like he's a very calculated person. He definitely did it on purpose. And in my opinion, like, I mean, I'm still grateful for everything he did, but I think it was a petty move on his front to just sort of ignore the Patriots outright.
Tom Brady, he can get away with it because he's Tom Brady and the legend, and he had a legendary career. And no matter what he does, he can always say to the New England fan base, "Look at what I gave you for so long."
Yeah, but I mean, then we could say, okay, yeah, when we were the ones who supported you the most during Deflategate and all those other controversies, we stood by you all those years and all that stuff, right? I mean, when his popularity was, I mean, because he's not a very popular player at the end of the day. I mean, the Patriots have a large sort of like support group throughout the country and everything like that. But at the end of the day, like, I mean, I think he should be careful about that too going forward, about like risking alienating, because he's a global star and everything like that. But I mean, so I don't know. Like, I mean, I think at some point you gotta, I mean, both sides. I think Belichick also needs to work and patch this up because, and I hope they do. I'm sure they will at some point. But I mean, this isn't good. Like the greatest, excuse me, like the greatest player in franchise history for the Patriots is not on good terms with the team. Well, that's not good. Like that's something both sides need to fix up as soon as they can, because I don't know, like it shouldn't be like that, right?
No, yeah, and I agree to that. And I do want to say again that I do feel like it's a really, I do feel like another thing about Tom Brady that just kind of, that also made him special was he was obviously like a great player, but also really seemed to be a pretty like normal person outside of it who just had a good relationship with the team. And I think that's that adds an extra dynamic we don't always see. I mean, you look at how we kind of view Tom Brady 2 years after he's left us versus how perhaps some Packers fans are thinking about Aaron Rodgers right now after he's been there for a long time and looks like he wanted to leave on a very sour note a year ago, right? So it's not like, it is one thing to have a great player on your team. It's another thing to have a player who you really feel like you've formed a good bond with, who seems like a pretty normal, good person with values outside of it. So that's why that's why you kind of want to have that. You want to have like a feeling that you guys left on amicable terms. I mean, one of the reasons, I mean, we all like Terry Francona did not have good feelings toward the Boston Red Sox when he left because of how much he clashed with John Henry and really the upper echelons of the Boston Red Sox organization, and that really showed, right? Like he had to be like like really begged to come back, I believe, for like Fenway's 100th anniversary because he just had absolutely no love left for the team. And at that point, like it's one of those things, right? Like it doesn't mean that that Brady didn't win all that stuff for us. It's just that as fans, like one of the things we appreciate is when great players leave with a good relationship with a team, because that way, like in the future, it's just easier to continue feeling that connection.
Well, yeah, I mean, even in that case, like, you could say that the management kind of messed up, right? Because they get rid of Franco. I mean, I know it's a football show, but I mean that season when they got rid of Francona, I mean that September collapse was mainly because of the pitchers and basically the whole team crumbling and just imploding, like underneath everything. And then after that, they bring Bobby Valentine, which pretty much leads to the worst Red Sox season in probably, like, I want to say more than a decade. So I mean, other rings came later on, but my point is, right, it's this transcends just like baseball or football or even sports in general, right?
Well, we're talking about baseball, right? Like David Ortiz, he has a terrific relationship with the Red Sox even now, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
Red Sox Nation was like so happy when he got into the Hall of Fame. So I mean, why can't that relationship still be there between the Patriots and Brady? Like, right? Like it should.
I guess it probably means that Brady never really loved New England or the Pats fans in the first place. He just kind of did it as a business transaction. I mean, yes, at the end of the day, it's all a business. But I'm getting the feeling that Brady almost viewed it purely on transactional terms.
Perhaps. I mean, I think at the end of the day, both sides, I mean, and I'm talking about Kraft and Belichick and Brady, those sides better find some resolution and work to patch things up, because this shouldn't be happening. Period. This shouldn't be happening.
That would be ideal, but I think realistically, that's really not. I don't see that happening. I mean, I don't know if you're like, I'm not expecting a heart-to-heart fireside conversation with the three of them with a mug of apple cider or something. Okay, that's never been anything that's never been the relation dynamic between those three. Like if anything,
but when Brady is elected to the Hall of Fame in 5 years,
he will, and yeah, regardless of this, he's still gonna have they're all professionals. They're all gonna have those events. What I'm saying is like there's not like they'll just work with this. Like I'm not expecting like they'll just be professional about it, and that's just how it's gonna be. And I doubt any.
I still think Pat's Nation
possessions. So, I mean, he thanked them, but again, like I don't know. It's all about, at the end of the day, it's like it's kind of up for us to guess what his intentions were, and at the it just, you know, there's always going to be like, and I'm not saying that should be the main focus, because obviously, you know, he deserves to have a good retirement. I'm just saying, like, you're always gonna psychologically see the difference between like a 6-page Instagram and then a thank you Pat's like reply on Insta. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what the difference is.
Well, I mean, the thank you Pats Nation, it sends a clear message of I'm okay with the fans, but not the team or the owner. The message is pretty clear.
I don't have a problem with that. I think it just, again, it's all about kind of leaving that taste in your mouth, and it's that's kind of like what it is for me, I guess. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with it.
But yeah, anyways, I mean, I think we've talked longer than I was anticipating talking about this. So, okay, let's just quickly talk about the Brian Flores lawsuit, and then we'll actually go and talk about the recap of the NFC, AFC Championship games and the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, just quickly, like obviously, this actually broke out on Tuesday as well, the same day as Brady's retirement. But this is a very serious story, obviously, because Brian Flores' lawsuit alleges discrimination while he was interviewing for coaching positions, essentially. And not just that, like, I mean, there's just a bunch of things that are introduced. Basically, when he talked about the discrimination, he's basically saying that there were like sham interviews that were conducted on behalf of the NFL Rooney Rule when he was interviewing for head coaching jobs. And basically, those interviews were just conducted for the sake of like satisfying the Rooney Rule. So they were sham interviews, and he didn't get those positions with the New York Giants. And he also interviewed with the Denver Broncos, and he alleges that when John Elway showed up for the interview, he was hungover. So he was not in a very professional state at all. It's a very unprofessional state to show up to conduct an interview when you're hungover. So like these are the sorts of allegations that have like been brought forth, in addition to him also alleging that Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, where Flores was the coach from 2019 through his firing in 2021, Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross offered to pay Brian Flores $100,000 for each loss to improve their draft position. So, I mean, there's just all sorts of, there's two very serious allegations that are being brought forth. And what my idea, or like what I'm going to just say about this is I am absolutely in full support of Brian Flores, and I absolutely hope he succeeds in exposing the NFL for its hypocrisy and all this type of like, all it says about trying to do for diversity, because I don't think the NFL does enough on it. So I am fully in support of Brian Flores' effort to really go after the NFL and bring all of this to light. So that's all I'm going to say. Good job, Brian Flores. And I am in full support of what you're doing, because this is like, I mean, the allegations you brought forth, this is unacceptable in the perception. This is unacceptable for the NFL overall. And the perception it sort of brings on trying to help diversity, because I don't think the NFL does enough on this front at all.
Oh yeah, because I mean they'll definitely pay a lot of lip service to it. They'll put messages like stop hate or end racism on the at the end zone or on people's helmets. But when it comes to actually living it or actually taking concrete steps to make sure that discriminatory actions are not in place, the NFL's been doing a pretty poor job, and that's a pretty generous way of putting it, right? I mean, if you just break down the numbers, right? I mean, Brian Flores, he got 19 wins in the last couple of seasons, and that's the best run that the Dolphins have had in a really, really long time. And most coaches would cruise to keeping their job if they had that kind of record. And I mean, like, and the numbers don't lie. I mean, unfortunately, of all the coaches out there, I mean, there's only one black coach in the league, Mike Tomlin, and he's done a phenomenal job at the Steelers. But that points to a different problem, is that it sends the message that if you're a black coach, you got to be twice as good just to keep your job. And for sending the message about, oh, we're for diversity, we're for inclusion. I mean, it's one thing to say it, but I mean, to the NFL, I just say you got to actually live it out, and you got to make sure that every coach is treated fairly. I mean, in hiring decisions, firing decisions, because I'm actually not too surprised about the sham interview thing with Brian Flores, because sham interviews happen. That's just like it just happens. But I mean, this was this is really, really blatant though. If it turns out that this is true and what he's alleging is true, and not just and the throwing games part, it's one thing to kind of say, look, okay, I'm not going to field my best players. I'm not going to give my best effort because, you know, it may be beneficial for us to lose and get better draft picks. That's like a tactical thing. But to actively pay a coach to say, oh, I'm going to give you this much money to purposely lose games, you're basically rigging the outcome at that point. And you're basically asking a coach to basically sabotage his own career and further put put, in this case, Brian Flores at a systemic disadvantage if this turns out to be true. And I mean, it's not even like close to describing the depths of just how bad things are if you want to break through in a league where a lot of coaching decisions, whether to bring you on as a coach, depends a lot more on who you know rather than how good you are. I mean, nepotism is rampant in the league, and of course, when the establishment isn't really that diverse in the first place, and there's a lot of nepotism, then you're not really going to get a lot of diversity. So, yes, I mean, if the NFL is serious about improving their diversity record, then they got to take a longer and deeper look at the hiring process and how they bring people on, because it should no longer just be about who you know. But also, a proposed solution would be like to have routine audits of like, okay, who are the coaches who got fired this year? What kind of records did they have? And look, and I get it, right? The owners have discretion in like whom to hire, whom to fire and stuff. But in especially egregious cases like these, there has to be some kind of check on that power, because the owners have way too much power as it stands. I mean, another solution would be to shake up ownership, but that's very likely not going to happen. But this is all assuming that the NFL is actually serious about doing something, which, I mean, they've given me every reason to believe that they're not serious. I mean, they'll just pay lip service to it, but that's about it. I don't know. I don't know if you have anything to chime in here, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just come to light, essentially, all the problems that are going on. So, I mean, Brian Flores should absolutely be a head coach in the NFL. I mean, he's proven that. And the NFL should also do a separate probe on Stephen Ross, because if this is true that he was actually like offering to pay to lose, he should no longer be allowed to be an owner of the Dolphins. So, I mean, I'm going to say two fronts. He should be forced to sell the team. That is absolutely inexcusable as well.
Other leagues have handled this, right? I mean, you can get rid of
Major League Baseball banned Pete Rose for life. I mean, they should ban Stephen Ross.
I mean, NBA, they got rid of Donald Sterling. So there is a precedent of leagues doing something about troublesome owners. So it's not like something can't be done about it.
I would say also the NFL has had this thing about, like, remember many years ago, there was the whole Bountygate thing with the Saints. Like, what did they do? They punished Sean Payton for an entire year. And like, there was a whole thing like, oh, the players get paid extra for causing an injury or something like that. Like, and who did they put it on? They put it on Sean Payton. If they have the same energy to punish Sean Payton, one of the most successful coaches in the NFL, they should have the same energy and against the owners for not creating equality across the league. That's what I got to say.
Absolutely. I think I just want to add to that, a few weeks ago, we were kind of talking about Brian Flores leaving and the Dolphins at the time. And, I know a lot of the news at that time was kind of about his kind of interaction with players like Tua or Kenny Stills. And when I look back, I think we were definitely missing a lot of the context and the discussion we were even having, right? Because first of all, it looks like a lot of that, maybe, I mean, not quite animosity, but maybe the environment that we were talking about for not making space for Tua, it sounded like all of those decisions were really coming from above him, really from Stephen Ross, and especially in regards to the kind of tampering allegations that we heard. So I do want to say that. And another thing at what Rohan said, I absolutely agree. When I look back and look at the kind of record of Brian Flores and what he did in Miami, I mean, winning all those games this season with like Jacoby Brissett playing, right? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And you're right that like owners, it's their team. I guess they have the discretion to do what they want to do. But I think in some cases where it's like really strange what's going on, it would be good to have some mechanism where you need to really justify it, especially in a case of Brian Flores, or even I think with the Colts, how they had I think Jim Caldwell when he got fired right after Peyton Manning left. Kind of similar circumstance or maybe not similar, but another idea of a coach doing really well and then suddenly just getting fired. So it's really a big problem, and I think you guys hit the nail on the head when talking about kind of the NFL's inability to really do much with these rules. And again, I think Ujan, you bring up a great point about energy. I mean, look at how hard they went after Tom Brady for the whole Deflategate thing, and then meanwhile you just constantly hear about you're just hearing about like allegations like this, and honestly, unfortunately, I'm not super optimistic on Roger Goodell or anyone taking the same energy to do this, because that's just not there's just no evidence that they're interested in that. I mean, they have this Rooney Rule instituted in place, but it hasn't really done anything in the league in terms of actually tangibly increasing coaching or leadership opportunities. I mean, the Houston Texans are considering Josh McCown as a head coach. Josh McCown, he has no coaching experience, right? At least like when Steve Nash went to the Nets, you're like, oh, he's a great basketball player, one of the greatest ever. Josh McCown, right?
Well, Steve Nash actually was a coach with the Warriors.
And Steve Nash actually had some coaching experience. And this isn't even like Drew Brees or like Tom Brady coaching. This is Josh McCown, right? Just kind of like a run of the mill
a journeyman
quarterback. And that's kind of it's just interesting. Like, you're telling me that Brian Flores couldn't even get a nod over Josh McCown. I mean, there's really no objective reason for that. It just goes to show, that with these rules, like, if you don't actually enforce them meaningfully, then people won't take you seriously. And that's why, especially, like, first of all, I'm going to first talk about the New York Giants, because that's probably, in terms of kind of the aspect of, really frankly, the fact that NFL isn't really hospitable for these kind of coaching opportunities for basically minority coaches, right? That the Giants need to be punished for this. And I don't just mean the usual, oh, we'll find their owner $1,000 or something. Okay, no, they don't care about that. They're all billionaires, right? Do something like taking away like a draft pick, right? Taking away a draft pick, even I don't know, like stripping ownership, stripping broadcasting revenue for a game, like something that really translates that this is absolutely unacceptable, right? You're not only wasting a guy's time, you're also explicitly going against the entire foundation of the Rooney Rule.
Hit the revenue source. I mean, like that's how a lot of soccer. That's how a lot of soccer leagues deal with incidents of racism in Europe.
That's the only way, and because at the end of the day, a lot of these guys, very unfortunately, they're only really going to care when it hits their wallet, and that's why you really have to make it clear that you have to institute this rule. We have this rule for a reason. You have to respect it, or there will be consequences, right? And it's just strange to me, because we all know that the NFL, like maybe 70% of the players are African American, right? And so many of the absolute all-stars, the legends of the game, like Randy Moss, it was was it like James Harrison? You think about
Peterson, right?
You could just name them so many. Walter Payton back in the day. And you're telling me that like there just are absolutely no coaching. There's no coaching interest or coaching like slots available for any of these guys.
It's bad business. Not only is it bad like for the obvious reasons of like racism is bad, but like it's also bad business, right? Because you're missing out on potentially lots of talent.
No, exactly. It's just it's on it's
but
just,
basically
it's
like what ends up happening is like people just seem to recycle over and over, like from the coaching trees of these coaches. And because of that, they're just so narrow-minded and thinking about who they're going to even be able to select. They're like, oh, this guy was under this coach. So, and this coach was very successful. So though, let's give him a chance. But by doing that, you're basically becoming so narrow-minded and like, yeah, as you're exactly right. Like, I mean, it just hurts the product in the end, because some of these coaches are clearly not qualified to be coaches. So they should also,
which is why, I mean, like, if I really think back to like what Tony Dungy was able to do in the 06-07 season, I mean, I understood that there was a historic moment, but like only now do I have a better picture of just like of how much of a big deal and how historic that really was. Obviously that came at the Patriots' expense, but that's a side note. But I mean, like Tony Dungy, I mean, what he was able to do with that team and the kind of history that he was able to set, especially given the kind of barriers that NFL coaches of color face. What he did back then was just remarkable. I just
and actually the other coach of the Chicago Bears that season, who he faced in the Super Bowl, was Lovie Smith, another African-American coach. So, and Lovie Smith was also fired despite the Bears having a terrific record. Like they made the Super Bowl under him, and they haven't even been close to a Super Bowl since he left. So, I mean, there's
so you can make the argument that the Bears shot themselves in the foot. So, so other than the usual kind of bad stuff that happens with racism, it also like hits them like in terms of their team's performance. So I mean, like any smart owner will eventually catch up to that and say, look, there's a vast pool of untapped potential and we just got to tap into that. And all these other owners, they're not they don't want to look at it. But if someone else wants to give them a chance, it could give them a ginormous tactical advantage.
Yeah, and it's just, and we could bring up so many examples, and I think, for example, David Culley on the Texans, who got fired just in January, 4-13 record. He had 4 wins I think they had 4 wins the year Deshaun Watson and JJ Watt were still with the team, and I believe might have been Bill O'Brien at the time. I believe he got a longer leash. It's just examples like that where there's no really rational reason for firing this guy other than the fact that he doesn't look like the owner or something like that. It just does. It's really I don't know. I think to make the Rooney Rule, maybe as a corollary, you need to do something where in these cases where there are really strange circumstances for firing a coach, right? In those circumstances, then maybe you need to actually justify it with really tangible reasons. You can't just say, oh, he didn't fit the mission of our club. Like, I don't care about that. That means nothing to me. Explain to me he had a bad relationship with X player. He did this. He did, like, this is a problem, right? I mean, and yeah, like you said, I'm glad Brian Flores did that. It takes a lot of really courage and selflessness to step up, especially in a league where you get absolutely
he might not coach again. He might not coach again. He might not,
and
he might end up getting blackballed the same way Kaepernick got blackballed by the league.
Exactly.
But he's willing to put it all on the line. He's willing to risk his career, and that takes a special level of courage.
No, it does, and I really want to say that, like, at the end of the day, like, when he's on the Dolphins, our AFC East rivalry, always like, haha, you got, like, aha, you're fired, your team's in chaos. But really, when you actually look at the facts, and especially after this lawsuit, you just have to say this transcends just like being a Patriots fan or whatever. It's really respecting other human beings and really making sure that.
And I'm also very proud of Brian Flores. I should just say that I'm very proud of the courage he's shown. So I am fully on board with this mission to take down the NFL in this issue, because this is inexcusable by the NFL.
100%.
And I would also say one thing, that, like, it's not really like it's not like there's a lack of diversity in the NFL, and I say that just like throughout the league. I mean, you have a lot of diversity when it comes to
the players or the owners. It depends on who you're talking about.
I'm talking about the players, like, in terms of, like, just like their teams in general. Like, like you said, there's a lot of diversity when it comes to like the faces of the league. You have your Lamar Jacksons, you have your Derrick Henrys, you have Tom Brady for the longest of times, and but, like, there's also the diversity when it comes, not in terms of head coaching, which is what Brian Flores is bringing up, but there's diversity. It's not like it's predominant. It's dominated by, there's diversity when it comes to, like, offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. Like, for example, Eric Bieniemy is a Kansas City offensive coordinator. Then you have, Jerron Mayo was an assistant on the Patriots.
Todd Bowles in Tampa.
Yep, him too, and Byron Leftwich, like I mentioned earlier. So it's not like, I would say that it's just, I think Brian Flores is bringing up the fact that in terms of, like, head coaches, for example, I think one of the head coaches, at least in recent memory, apart from Mike Tomlin, was Anthony Lynn, like, from the Chargers. And, like, he didn't last long, and even after moving from San Diego to LA and all that. And then suddenly Brandon Staley comes in and almost leads them to the playoffs. And Anthony Lynn, like, almost took that team to the playoffs, and he didn't have
he took them to the playoffs. So Brandon Staley hasn't even done that yet. Yeah, Brandon Staley didn't even do that. Even with young upstart Justin Herbert and a terrific talented Chargers team, he didn't even make it to the playoffs. Anthony Lynn took that team to the playoffs. And
right. And that was with Phillip Rivers. So but that being said, Anthony Lynn has been a longer coach than Brandon Staley has. So I would say that I hope that, I think for the sake of the league, I think Eric Bieniemy has a coaching opportunity with the Saints, or at least had an interview. I sincerely hope he gets that get that opportunity and hopefully New Orleans will take him as a coach. Hopefully, and if that happens, that's the start for other owners to follow New Orleans' lead.
Flores, by the way, is still in the running for the Houston job, and I think he also interviewed with New Orleans. So, there's a chance that Flores could also end up in New Orleans or Houston, which would be terrific. I would be fully on board with him as a head coach because he deserves to be a head coach. He's shown it. I mean, what he's done, like, I mean, year one in Miami, I don't know if people remember this. The Dolphins were projected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And they started 0-7. And at that point, we were thinking that this might be like an 0-16 season. And they ended up going 5-11, which is, I mean, they finished 5-4. And they beat the Patriots in week 17, when the Patriots had everything to play for to get that 2 seed. Brian Flores devised a masterful game plan to help Miami spring the upset. Brian Flores is a terrific coach, and he absolutely should be a head coach in this league. So, I mean, I am fully on board with that, and I do hope he I wish him the success in every venture of his life at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think you said it well. I'm on that boat as well, and I really think he's really brave, and hope he is able to have some justice for really those really atrocious experiences.
But yeah, I mean, so Brian, we are fully on board with you, and we wish you the best of luck going forward. So yes, so that will sort of wrap up our discussion on the Brian Flores lawsuit. And now let's just talk about the AFC and NFC Championship games from last week, and we'll just briefly touch upon it, and then we'll go into the Super Bowl preview, which is what mainly the listeners in terms of the game content are looking for today. So I mean, just the AFC Championship game, just kind of a quick overview. Obviously, we know the Bengals won that game 27-24. Evan McPherson, Money Mac.
Major upset.
Yeah, I mean, Money Mac has been awesome. Evan McPherson, that's his new nickname now. I mean, he's terrific. I mean, the Chiefs were up 21-3, and then it was 21-10 after Samaj Pirine scored a 41-yard touchdown. And then the Chiefs kind of got a little arrogant because the Bengals 1-yard line right before halftime. They decide to, instead of kicking a field goal, which would make it 24-10, they decide to try some play to Tyreek Hill, which got stuffed, and they didn't score anything at halftime. So it's 21-10, and then the Chiefs in the second half only managed one field goal, which came at the very end of the game, and the Bengals came back. I mean, they were terrific. The Cincinnati's defense was outstanding. I mean, I think what they did, dropping 8 defenders back, completely threw off Mahomes, and I mean, just outstanding overall. Like, I mean, that drive for the field goal to make it when it was 24-24, I mean, Mahomes got the ball to the Bengals 5-yard line, but here's the sequence of plays. So first and goal from the Bengals 5, a 1-yard rush by Jerick McKinnon. So you have the 4-yard line, right? What happens next? Second and goal from the 4-yard line, sack for 5 yards. And then third and goal, what happens there? He's sacked for 15 yards by defensive end Sam Hubbard, who did an outstanding job chasing down Mahomes and even forced a fumble, which Mahomes, actually Joe Tooney, former Patriot, recovered it. But I mean, they went from first and goal from the Bengals 5-yard line to essentially a fourth and goal and forced a long field goal attempt, which they did get, went to overtime. And of course, the Kansas City once again won the coin toss in overtime. But this time, what happened in that overtime? Yeah, I mean,
he got picked.
Threw an interception. And I mean,
Mahomes,
let's be real, he was horrible.
It was not a good game for Mahomes. I mean, like, it was very uncharacteristically bad.
I mean, he threw touchdowns on the first 3 drives. So at that point, you're like, okay, this is just going to be a long day. But I mean, 21-3, and then, I mean, they just kind of collapsed. And I mean, finishing 26 of 39, he had 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, but I mean, really 2 interceptions. He was sacked 4 times. I think Cincinnati just did a terrific job rattling him. And I mean, I think Von Bell with that interception late in that overtime, I mean, that was just kind of the final blow. Mahomes was just not good, but I think the reason he was not good was because Cincinnati's defense was outstanding. I mean, previously last week, I had said that the 2 previous opponents they had faced, Las Vegas Raiders and the Tennessee Titans, both of those teams are kind of like mediocre to decent offenses at best. But what they did against Patrick Mahomes, like, that is outstanding performance altogether. So, like, I mean, they deserve the win. I mean, Joe Burrow was awesome. T. Higgins, 6 catches for 103 yards. Jamar Chase, as always, 6 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. And the Bengals, they just never lost confidence, even when they were down 21-3. And the leadership by Joe Burrow, I mean, as a second-year player, what he just displayed, I mean, it's just outstanding. So, I mean, just an outstanding game plan. So, I mean, that's sort of my takeaway from this game. What do you guys think about this? Like, I'm just very impressed by Cincinnati.
I was going to say that this game, the AFC Championship game, was just like the Week 17 regular season game. You know, Kansas City blitzed out to an early lead, had a big lead at halftime, and then ultimately it comes down to a last-second field goal. And it so happened to be that Kansas City only got a field goal in the second half of both games against Cincinnati. That's all. I mean, I think the turning point for the game was when Mahomes threw that first interception. I mean, when he had that run pass option, which the run wasn't really there, the pass wasn't really there either. So, and then I don't really know what Mahomes really saw to even attempt that pass. I think they were just better off, handing the ball off, taking a loss. I mean, it's much better than an interception. At least you bring it to a third down at that point rather than losing the ball. And ultimately Cincinnati scored from the ensuing on the ensuing drive. I think then the deep ball to Tyreek Hill didn't really make sense. There were already two guys there. And Tyreek Hill's not the biggest guy. He's not going to jump up and you can throw the ball short to him and if he's in open space, he's great. We saw that against Buffalo. We all know this. But he's not going to be like this whole deep guy. And Cincinnati knows that Tyreek Hill is their big play guy. I mean, and if you shut him, but then of course that on the flip side, if you shut down Tyreek Hill, that opens up Travis Kelce, that opens up, Demarcus Robinson, all those other guys, right? So I think and then of course dropping back was actually a smart idea because yes, Mahomes can beat you with his legs, but he doesn't really run that much. Think about other quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson runs a lot. Mahomes is not Lamar Jackson. So, and Cincinnati knew that. So I think they planned this to perfection, especially in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Joe Burrow, I mean, he is able to run the ball, and that's probably something that the Rams are gonna have to watch out for, right? Because he can pass, he can run. He can connect with Jamar Chase, but I mean he's also got T Higgins, so he's got other weapons as well. So that's I mean the Bengals offense is pretty potent. And Joe Burrow, I mean he's kind of like scrappy, but he's able to get the job done, right? I mean he does take a lot of sacks. I'm pretty sure he leads the league in the number of sacks taken. But despite all that though, he's pretty much still able to find a way to get the job done and find his receivers one way or the other, right? I mean they're not really that much dependent on the run game, right? Bengals, they got Joe Mixon, but I mean it's primarily the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase show, and probably T Higgins. That's basically
CJ Uzomah, the tight end who got injured.
Yeah, if you really look at it, right, it's really a tale of two quarterbacks, right? Joe Burrow in the last game, Joe Burrow is kind of fairly new to the league, is just kind of figuring things out, but he's still able to do it. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, even though he's not been in the league much longer, I would say he's pretty well established by this point. And I don't know, I think there's probably no better way to say it other than the fact that I think the Chiefs just got complacent. They just kind of gradually, slowly let the Bengals back into the game. It's not like it happened boom, boom, boom. It was drip, 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 drip. Slowly, they were to chip away at it and claw their way back into the game. And before you know it, it's already overtime. And then like you said, that nail in the coffin was the interception in overtime. So I think what the Bengals have been able to show is that they could take down great teams. And I mean, if they're able to take down a great team like the Chiefs, then the Rams better watch out.
Yeah, I think there's a few takeaways from this game, right? The first really huge one is that you have to just give Joe Burrow a lot of credit in this game, I think. And first of all, and that obviously comes with the big credit for the defense, but I mean, first of all, just think about the fact that really for most of the game, at least sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so for most of the game, right, the first 2 or 3 quarters, we actually saw the Chiefs basically double coverage on Jamar Chase, really trying their best to take him out of the game. And at the end of the day, I think as kind of analysts, we sometimes kind of assume that if a player's not getting the ball, then they're just kind of not doing anything. And in reality, we saw the way that Joe Burrow really involved Jamar Chase on plays, even when he wasn't the actual target getting balls, right? I mean, there was a 2nd and 10, I believe, late in the first quarter when there's a fake jet sweep from Jamar Chase that shifts the defense to the right. which then opens up space for T. Higgins on the left. Sorry, which opens up space, I believe, for either Mixon or Perrine to go up some yards on the left, right? There are just plays like that where Joe Burrow, and you could say that's part of the offensive coordinator's job too, but I just have to believe he has some input in that. The ability to really involve his great players and really make the most out of it. And another thing too is that, again, we talk about the sacks and the O-line. I even talked about this last week, that Joe Burrow, it doesn't matter how bad his O-line is. The fact is he's able to do everything he does, even with an O-line that basically lets him get sacked in kind of the top 2 in the league. I mean,
one of the highest
no, exactly.
in pressure situations like that.
Exactly. And yet in this game, he only got sacked once, and there were at least 2 to 3 huge plays in the context of this game where it looked like he was absolutely going down, and he literally just escaped and got a first down. I remember there was actually in the fourth quarter, right when the fourth quarter began, it was like 3rd and 10. It looked like he was about to get sacked for a big loss, and he just completely dodged the players in a really Patrick Mahomes kind of look-alike play and just got a first down like that. And there's just so many individual Joe Burrow plays like that that really made the difference here. And I mean, this game, in my opinion, really does cement a position for him as an elite quarterback in the league, hopefully for years to come. And I think this is just a really good example of how versatile the Bengals offense was, how they're able to involve T. Higgins in so many big plays when Jamar Chase wasn't there, and then how Jamar Chase still ended up grabbing a touchdown on a massive one-on-one, just one of the best wide receivers in the league. So I think overall the Bengals offense, Joe Burrow has a great game, and also their ability to involve Jamar Chase with or without the ball getting thrown to him were absolutely critical. I do want to say though that. And I'd be interested to hear your takes on this. I know a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads on Patrick Mahomes' throw to Tyreek Hill at the end of the first half, where basically he threw to him maybe 2-3 yards from the end zone, doesn't get it, and the quarter ends. And apparently, I guess it looked like Patrick Mahomes wasn't on the same page because he thought they had a timeout left. He didn't realize the quarter had ended. So I think a lot of people are kind of talking about that as a turning point in the game, but I don't know. For me, I didn't really mind it so much. It's one of those things where it didn't work out, and I think that's why we're talking about it. Because in that position, to me, it's not really that different from going for it on 4th and goal, which I think we've seen a steady increase in teams doing this kind of thing throughout the season. And I personally didn't have a big issue with it. I'd be kind of interested in what you guys think about whether that was like kind of an arrogant play versus, in my opinion, the direction of the game.
Well, that doesn't really pay off from a risk-reward perspective unless you're desperate, right? I mean, there are other situations where you would want to go for it on 4th down if it's like 4th and short, but like you're in midfield and you're not yet in field goal range, but you're also like far enough down the field that if the other team gets the ball, then it's not as bad. That's a situation to go for it on 4th down. But in 4th and goal, I mean, that's a very likely scenario where you're throwing away 3 points. And
you're throwing it away. I agree, but to me, but I do see, I could have seen the Chargers doing this, for example. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Ujan, go ahead.
No, I was saying that it's almost like from where they were, it's almost like the equivalent of going for a 2-point conversion. I mean, I know it's not, you're going for a touchdown, but it's like the same kind of starting position, approximately. I mean, I'm not saying it's exact, but
from a risk reward perspective, it's actually less risky than a 2-point conversion, because in a 2-point conversion, you're going for one extra point.
It was not 4th and goal at the time. It was actually only 2nd and goal.
Touchdown versus field goal. That's a 3-point.
No, I'm saying effectively it was a 4th and goal type. Well, what I meant by that is that
because you have 5 seconds. Why don't you? Throw it into the end zone. That's what you should have done.
My point is that it's the same. Like, if you think about it, was a 4th and goal. If you miss it, then you lose your chance to get another play. I'm saying functionally, this had the same.
But they didn't have to make it like that. What they could have done is you have 5 seconds. You actually throw it into the end zone. You throw the ball into the end zone, so that way it's incomplete.
Through the back of or if it's not there, through the back of the end zone, because then if no options are there, quickly throw it out, and then you maybe you have one more play to kick a field goal or something, right?
Mahomes could have totally done that. He did that in 13 seconds. He was able to. We saw what he.
He could have done that.
Seconds.
But you're telling me that. I mean, at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes
a bad play call. It was a bad play call. I mean,
okay, if you give it to Tyreek Hill with 2 yards to go, you got to say 9 times out, you got to I trust Tyreek Hill on a normal case to juke past a guy and get 3 yards. All right, come on, Like he did that like 4 times during the game. Like that's Tyreek Hill's specialty. So like, and you're the quarterback who like Tyreek Hill is your main receiver. So like, I think in that, if it was anyone else in that situation, like if he was thrown to like Mecole Hardman there, I'd be like, okay, that's weird. But you're throwing to Tyreek Hill, whose specialty is kind of, he takes a pause. He's maybe 2 or 3 yards away from the guy, he jukes and just sprints past him to get to where he needs to go. So,
but at the same time, I would say that, Cincinnati could have prepared for that because like I said earlier, they know Tyreek Hill is like their main threat. So they're probably prepared for, they're probably going to give the ball to Tyreek Hill. Everybody just like kind of take a zone in the field, and then they probably figured out like what they were going to do. So I would say that's a great play by Cincinnati. I mean, as much as we're saying that it was a bad play call, hats off to Cincinnati for stopping them.
Yeah, I'd go with that angle. I'd say it was a really good defensive stop by Cincinnati rather than a explicitly like terrible play call, if that makes sense. That's like the distinction I'm trying to make there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens now in the Super Bowl. Let's just quickly talk about the Rams 49ers game. So obviously that was also a comeback because the Rams were down 17-7, but they scored 13 unanswered in the fourth to win this game. I mean, Rohan, you're on mute, by the way. But yeah, Stafford was terrific. And Rohan, I think you're still on mute, by the way. So yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly go and give the breakdown of the game. Then we'll go into the discussion. But anyways, Matthew Stafford late in the game, like he was pretty good. I mean, 337 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, should have been 2, but Jaquiski Tartt, the safety for 49ers, literally just dropped it, literally went right into his hands. He dropped it, just a bad drop. I mean, Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr., they just came through late. Like, Cooper Kupp is just unstoppable. Like, that's all I've just come to realize at this point. Like, it doesn't matter who you defend, who tries to defend him. He's just going to go off for like over 100 yards. I actually set up a Twitter poll just for fun, by the way. The over-under for him is 102.5 yards for the Super Bowl. And so far, everyone has voted that he'll cross 102 yards for the Super Bowl. So, I mean, 11 catches for 142 yards. Odell Beckham, 9 catches for 113 yards. They also had Kendall Blanton, 5 catches for 57 yards. So, I mean, the 49ers had a good game plan, I thought, initially. But, I mean, I think late in the game, Cooper Kupp and Odell just kind of carried the Rams to this win. And, I mean, obviously that late interception by Jimmy G to Rams linebacker Travon Howard. I mean, I don't really fault Jimmy Garoppolo too much for that because at that point, it's like a 3rd down. He's trying to avoid a sack because it would be like 4th and 20 at that point. So I think he was just trying to get something to make it a more manageable 4th down, but it just happened to get intercepted. So, I mean, I think the Rams played well, and obviously everything's kind of clicking for them, right? They sort of had an off and on like regular season, but I mean, clearly at this point, I mean, they beat Arizona, they beat Tampa, the defending champions with Brady, and then they've beaten the 49ers. So, I mean, they deserve the win. So, I mean, that's sort of my takeaway from this performance. And I'll talk about them more in the Super Bowl context, but yeah, let's just quickly, guys, let's just discuss this quick, and then let's go on to the Super Bowl. So let's just keep this discussion kind of quick.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe that the Niners blew a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. It felt kind of reminiscent of the Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl, where we're like.
What about the Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan, the head coach? He used to have a good tendency for. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan has something with blowing leads in the fourth quarter of playoff games, like Atlanta with the Patriots, where he was the offensive coordinator of Atlanta back then, and then I mean the Super Bowl 54, and now this NFC Championship game. So, I mean, there's just something about like what he does in the fourth quarter. It seems like he just sort of freezes in these late game moments, and it kind of hurts them.
I just think that's it's a matter of like making adjustments during games because, like, at the start of games we said, oh, San Francisco is doing great. Like, they're out to a 10-point lead and, they're sticking to their game plan. But like, in the fourth quarter, teams are going to figure you out. So like, and, I saw this stat. In the last 3 playoff losses for Kyle Shanahan, in the fourth quarter, he has been outscored by a total of 53-0. That's like unheard of. And if I want to make it worse for him, if you include the overtime, add that, it's 59-0. So, and even if he's losing these games, like even in the wins, like take the NFC wildcard game against Dallas, for example. Like they won that game because Dallas had so many penalties and of course that botched last play, which I don't really know what happened, and we're not really going to talk about that. But you know, like they could have lost. Remember, they could have. I thought they were pretty lucky to make it to the NFC Championship game. I mean, you know, from the wild card, they almost lost that one. The divisional game against Green Bay, it was a blocked punt. It's not like their offense did that great. I mean, their offense was really responsible for 6 points in a divisional game. Like, come on now. And then this one, like, you know, they couldn't close the game out. I mean, I'm not going to blame Kyle Shanahan for the dropped interception. That's totally on Jaquiski Tartt. If you're that wide open with nobody around you, you got to make that catch, whether you're a receiver or a defensive back. So, I mean, you know, it was poor game management, and San Francisco didn't capitalize on their opportunities to close this game.
Yeah, and I think first of all, I think Ujan, you really hit the nail on the head with that analysis. And I think for the 49ers especially, they're probably going to have some soul searching to do after this game. In all likelihood, it seems like it was, I guess it's now official that it was the last game for Jimmy Garoppolo on the San Francisco 49ers. And I guess it's interesting because he threw 2 touchdowns and over 200 yards, but I guess I just never really got the feeling watching the game. And there was a moment where he was really going to take the game by the scruff of his neck and really take the win. I mean, and if you look at a lot of his, at least like some of his big plays, like I think Deebo Samuel's touchdown is a great example. I mean, a lot of them were kind of these short completions that there's receivers then really turned into really significant gains. I mean, Deebo caught it maybe for a 7-yard gain and just ran for a 44-yard touchdown after that. So I just didn't, and you know, the last 3 possessions collectively where the Niners really failed to do anything, he was 3 for 9 with a pick, right? When they desperately needed a field goal or something, he just couldn't get it done for them. And I think that is something I guess the Niners are going to have to think about next year with, I guess, in this case, Trey Lance is going to be their starter. But at the same time, all credit to the Rams. I mean, Odell really showed off exactly what the Rams wanted when they came. He really is looking like that player who kind of dazzled the screen when he was on the New York Giants. And I think that combo of him and Cooper Kupp is just going to be really a lot to handle for any defense. And then couple that with the fact that they, of course, have just an incredible defense. And we see Von Miller time and time again, just adding that extra element as a pass rusher. Everyone's focusing on Aaron Donald, but I don't think Aaron Donald had a particularly loud game against the Niners, at least not what we usually see. Instead, we saw just collectively a really strong performance. We heard a lot kind of tactically about how the Rams really stopped the Niners run game really deliberately by basically securing the edge, forcing them to run inside and get very little gains. Overall, just a really phenomenal play by the Rams, both on really both sides of the ball. And I think they're going to be a lot to handle for Cincinnati.
Yeah, Rohan, I think you were saying something. Do you just want to quickly talk about what you were going to say? Then we're going to move on to the Super Bowl talk.
I was just remarking at the time that seeing the Niners blow a 10-point lead almost felt like deja vu.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think Kyle Shanahan, obviously, he's a good coach, but I mean, it just seems like sort of these.
We'll have to see what Jimmy G's future is.
Yeah, I mean, he could go to Pittsburgh or somewhere, someone who needs a bridge quarterback for a few years. So we'll see. But anyways, yeah. Quick recap of the AFC and NFC Championship games. So yeah, let's now go on to Super Bowl 56. Finally, our discussion will go towards the big game next Sunday. So first off, the first question I just want to bring up is what can the Rams defense learn from the Chiefs defense 2 weeks ago with regards to how to properly defend the Bengals offense? So, I mean, for me, it's going to be getting pressure on Joe Burrow. So we talked about how Burrow is great under pressure, but now you're dealing with Aaron Donald and Von Miller, who should absolutely thrive and feast against this poor Cincinnati offensive line. And I think they should just consistently pressure Burrow, try to sack him a lot, because here's the thing, right? Because for me, it's going to be like this. Burrow only sacked once against Kansas City, but he was sacked 9 times against Tennessee, and they did lose the game. But I would also like to point out that the reason the Titans lost that game was because Ryan Tannehill threw a late interception. So the Titans were still on pace to winning this game until that pick by Ryan Tannehill late that basically cost them the game. So the key is to really just pressure Burrow and really force him to make mistakes, because he's young. He's still prone to making these mistakes. And the matchup is going to be very important for Jalen Ramsey against Jamar Chase, because Jamar Chase is absolutely Like, he's already become one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in just his rookie season. So, I mean, really, I think Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback, like an all-pro cornerback against pretty much an all-pro talent in Jamar Chase. That's going to be a key matchup for me to watch out for, see sort of what happens. And as a result of this, I think T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, maybe Uzoma if he's healthy again. That's going to be my key to watch for at least the matchup. So, yeah, I mean, I think for the Rams then, really got to pressure Joe Burrow, get to him, sack him, and then Jalen Ramsey's going to have to be locked down against Jamar Chase. Those are sort of my breakdowns. So, yeah, I just want to hear what you guys are saying.
Yeah. So normally pressuring the quarterback is an effective strategy, right? I mean, like anytime you've ever asked me, well, what are the keys to containing the offense? It usually comes back to like make life tough for the quarterback, put pressure on the quarterback. In this case, it's going to be effective, but I think the amount of the amount of usefulness that the defense, that the Rams defense is going to get off of this is probably better used in containing containing the deeper areas, blocking off the receiving routes and doing deep zone coverage because like for Joe Burrow, he's shown that he's able to perform under pressure. I mean, what the offensive line has not really been helping him that much, and he does take a lot of sacks, but despite all of that, he's still able to effectively reach his targets down the field. And that's where Joe Burrow is able to do most of his damage. So I would say, this is one of the few times I'm not gonna say go after the QB. I'm gonna say go after Jamar Chase and go after Higgins because they are the probably the bigger weapons here. I know they're the bigger weapons here than Joe Burrow. Usually the quarterback is the biggest offensive weapon, but in this case, I would say going after the QB. Your defensive effort is better spent elsewhere.
Yeah, I think this kind of brings me back to the discussion we had with our previous predictions up to this game, and again, I think Rohan said it pretty well that the pass rush, the idea of that is always there, but I also want to point out that it's true that the Rams have Aaron Donald and Von Miller, but I mean it's not like the Kansas City Chiefs pass rush was like just on snooze or something. That Melvin Ingram and Tyrann Mathieu who've been really good pass rushers this season. I mean, Melvin Ingram in particular was a midseason addition that really changed the Chiefs' defense in the midseason. So this wasn't a bad pass rush. This same pass rush got 4 sacks against Joe Burrow when they played him in Week 17. And I think it's just the point that it goes back to what I said earlier, that Joe Burrow has the ability to just escape the pocket and really break out of it on third downs and really get to the first down, right? So, and not only that, but even Andy Reid was saying in the kind of the post game that the Bengals had actually adjusted to actually give Joe Burrow more protection by actually loading extra people onto the offensive line to control the line of scrimmage against Kansas City. So, the Rams can try it, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, at this point, there's no surprise. Like, they are going to try that, right? Everyone knows that the Bengals have a bad offensive line. They're going to try that. I think for me, what I'd say is maybe more interesting is I'd be interested in their ability to actually limit the rush again, like they did against the Niners, because I think we talk about the rush and how it's definitely true that the passing stats and the players they have there is what kind of grabs our attention. But I think we kind of forget that Joe Mixon had the 3rd most rushing yards in the NFL this season. He had 1,200. And in the last game against Kansas, he quietly had 88 yards of rushing too, and they had 100 total yards of rushing on offense. This is a team that does know how to rush the ball in especially kind of like early down situations like we saw. And in fact, on their last drive when they were getting into field goal range in overtime against Kansas, the last like 4 or 5 plays were all rushing yards where they got positive yardage. Like I think maybe 4 to 5 yards per turn. So I think if you can actually stop that, then you really force the Bengals to become one-dimensional, and then that's when you can actually, take advantage of kind of more creative schemes. Like you could honestly even learn from what Joe Burrow did against what the Bengals defense did against the Chiefs. You could just have a lot of kind of fake showing plays to the QB and then drop a lot of people into coverage and really make it hard to actually throw to Jamar Chase. So I think the run game is actually a kind of sneaky thing that the Rams could try to stop since they already had so much success against San Francisco.
For me, I think it comes down to Jalen Ramsey versus Jamar Chase. That's the number one. I mean, we all know that Jamar Chase is like the big playmaker, kind of like Tyreek Hill for Kansas City. I mean, I'm not trying to compare Jamar Chase to Tyreek Hill, but like, in terms of the team's like importances, I would say, that's the matchup that I think everybody's looking for. But I would also say if that gets shut down, and I think the Cincinnati's run game will get shut down too, because you got Aaron Donald in the middle, you got Von Miller. I mean, Rams defense was outstanding in the second half against San Francisco. So I think that that's really something to look out for. I mean, if those connections are not there for Cincinnati, then where's the offense going to come from? That opens up T. Higgins, maybe CJ Uzoma, depending on his health. But and the other thing is Matthew Stafford's also prone to mistakes as well. I mean, we said that about Joe Burrow. Same goes for Matthew Stafford. He threw that pick in the end zone. I mean, yes, there was a deflection there, but you can't really throw picks in the end zone. Of course, that reminds us of Super Bowl 49, right? Those good old times, right?
But, I mean, I like how that's good to bring it on, because that's like basically the next question, essentially, like what can the Bengals defense learn about the 49ers defense about how to properly defend this Rams offense? So just keep going. I just wanted to like kind of transition to this next question for all of us.
Yeah. So I would say that, like I said in the NFC Championship Recap, it's not that San Francisco's defense played terribly. I mean, they just didn't make plays. So I think what worked well for them was, dropping back in the secondary, having like it was more of like a zone defense, because it wasn't so much of man to man. It felt like like you had like a safety help, and then linebackers dropping. So it's kind of like you're tricking they were essentially tricking the Rams defense like into maybe there'll be a blitz, but nope, we're gonna drop back. So it's kind of, that's really what the Rams were doing. And I think I actually think that that's probably going to be something that'll help the Rams when it comes to this particular game, because if the blitz comes, Joe Burrow won't necessarily be able to know whether he has to throw the ball quickly or if he'll have time in the pocket. That's something that usually takes a few years for quarterbacks to develop, like how to read the defense, like what are you gonna see from them. So that's what I think the defense is in terms of the Rams defense, it comes down to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, let's just
I would also say that, like, in this case, playing like a deeper kind of zone coverage would be more effective, because at least for the Bengals defense, right? They're probably not going to be able to get much off of like going all in on trying to sack Matthew Stafford, because I mean the Rams offense, Rams is probably like one of the best offensive lines out there. They're way better than the Bengals offensive line. I'm not to say that they should try it every now and again, but I mean, it could potentially work, because we don't really know as much about how Matthew Stafford operates under pressure. But I mean, we know that Matthew Stafford's biggest weapon is Cooper Kupp, and like that's the key. The key to stopping this offense is going to be to contain Cooper Kupp through any means, shape, or form. And in that sense, probably the Bengals probably have a little bit of an Bengals defense probably has a little bit more of an advantage over the Rams defense, because the Bengals defense could probably go closer to all in. They could probably double team Cooper Kupp or try something like that. Whereas it's not really something I could say about the Rams defense, because if they try to like double team, say Jamar Chase, for example, Joe Burrow's got other options. So yeah, I mean, Matthew Stafford could potentially have other options, but not to the same kind of extent that Joe Burrow has. So that's kind of my take on the Bengals defense.
Definitely. I guess the next point I would just bring up then is, or the next question is just like, what can the Bengals defense learn from the 49ers last week about how to properly defend this Rams offense? So for me, just very quickly, it's just going to be that they got to accept that Cooper Kupp is going to have a monster game, regardless of who is like throwing that ball. So like, I mean, regardless of what they try in terms of coverage, not who's throwing the football. That's Matthew Stafford, obviously. I mean, I thought the 49ers defense did a terrific job overall, but against the Rams offense, they sacked Stafford twice and intercepted him once. And I think the Bengals defense has also been very feisty with these picks so far. I mean, they have 5 interceptions in 3 playoff games, and Stafford is more than capable of throwing a couple. So
I'm pretty sure Stafford leads the league in number of interceptions thrown. So he does kind of have that dubious distinction. And he's one of a very short list of quarterbacks to lead the league in interceptions and still go to the Super Bowl. It's a list of only like a few quarterbacks. I'm pretty sure Eli Manning is on that list as well. I think that was the last time or last couple times ago that it was done, is back in 2007 with Eli Manning.
But I think that comes down to, like, you know, having so many weapons. Like with Sean McVay, they're a very pass-heavy offense, and it makes sense. You know, Cooper Kupp with the Triple Crown, like receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Odell Beckham there. You got Tyler Higbee as tight end. You got
Van Jefferson.
You have what is it? Blanton, who kind of emerged from last game in
Van Jefferson, right?
I'm sorry?
Van Jefferson?
Yep, I mentioned him. So I think, so with all these weapons, like, why would you not throw the ball? You know what I mean? I mean, of course, when you have a running game of good old friend Sony Michel, who's more of like I wouldn't say he's more of a pass catcher. He's not really a pass catcher. He's more of like a run blocker. Like, he's more your power running back. Then you have Cam Akers, like, out of the backfield. So, I mean, he can catch the ball too. So it's really, I mean, the more you throw, the more, of course, there's the bigger chance of interceptions, right? And of course, and I think Sean McVay is okay with taking that risk because he knows that the receivers can make plays. Like, of course, Cooper Kupp has proven that all year. Odell Beckham's done it throughout his career. Tyler Higbee's a reliable tight end. So I don't think the interceptions really really going to affect the number of interceptions thrown really affects Stafford or the Rams for that matter.
Oh, Anirban, do you have anything else you want to add to that, or do we cover everything?
I think you guys mainly covered everything. I think you guys did.
Okay. I also realized, like, some of these next questions we already kind of touched upon it. Basically, it's just about which players do the Rams defense best need to game plan for, and which players do the Bengals defense need to best game plan for. So I think we covered. Obviously, for the Rams, I mean, for me, it would be
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I mean, those are going to be the big ones. And then obviously for the Rams offense is Cooper Kupp. I think he's going to thrive. So really, I think the Bengals defense should more have a game plan for how to contain Odell Beckham Jr. and Van Jefferson. Is there anyone else who has like another player they want to add to that list, or did we kind of just hit the nail there? I a lot of these questions.
I just want to highlight quickly though that, again, I think we have to I think it's good to kind of expand our mentality of these players and how, you know, wide receivers or whoever your pass catchers are going to have a role whether or not they're targeted, right? And I think Zach Taylor, whoever the Bengals OCR and Joe Burrow, they really designed plays that got the most out of Jamar Chase, because I want to stress this. The Kansas City Chiefs tried very hard to completely write him off the game. He had, like, I don't know, 2 catches or whatever in the first half, right? Instead, you had, the way they got them involved was they had a play where he was on the right side of the line of scrimmage and T. Higgins comes in behind him. So he forces a Chiefs linebacker to cover T. Higgins, which then puts Jamar Chase in a one-on-one that he gets a completion for. And there's just multiple plays like that. And then on the touchdown drive where Jamar Chase, he was one-on-one in the end zone and he made a great catch. I mean, I think we need to really, this is more specifically for the Bengals offense, but I think they've really proven that if they want Jamar Chase to get in the game, they'll get him in the game, right? You can try to write him off with double coverage or whatever, but teams are going to plan for that. And even if he's not catching the ball, he will change how defenders around him behave, right? And if that means he's going to open up space for T. Higgins, like we saw against the Chiefs, or for CJ Uzomah if he's back, then that's going to be the deciding factor here. So I don't think it's just a simple matter of writing off Jamar Chase, because at the end of the day, you can write him off in coverage, but you can't write him off in the influence he has on defense.
Yeah, and I guess for the Bengals, like, sort of defense, like, I mean, Cooper Kupp is obviously, like, he's just basically uncoverable. So, like, I mean, that's why I'm more like just saying on that end, like, the Cincinnati defense probably doing what they did against Kansas City last week is probably a good bet. Putting 8 guys back and really trying to force Matthew Stafford to throw into the zone. I mean, Stafford is definitely, I wouldn't say he's like an elite quarterback at all. So I think he's definitely capable of making a bunch of bad decisions and kind of making some interception type throws. So I think that's what sort of my takeaway is on this type of game plan for Cincinnati. Sort of, I think just basically stick with what you have so far, because clearly it's working. So, I mean, is that what you guys all think?
Okay. That pretty much just hits it right there exactly.
Just stick with what they're doing at this point. Like, honestly, like, I mean, okay, so let's just go to the next question now. Like, I mean, I guess, again, I realize we kind of covered upon this, but like, how concerned should Cincinnati be about this offensive line against LA's pass rush? And I think there should be some concern because obviously Donald and Miller are both very, very good at rushing the quarterback. I mean, against the Cardinals in the playoffs, they had 2 sacks off of Kyler Murray. Against Tampa, they had 3 sacks off of Brady, but they didn't sack Jimmy Garoppolo once, but they did pressure to him like consistently. And ultimately that final interception at the end was basically on a pass rush, which basically forced that bad decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would expect Von Miller to be a bigger than expected part of the game just because of how porous that offensive line for the Bengals is. Yeah, we know Joe Burrow can play under pressure, but you know it's like we're gonna see we're gonna see the Rams pass rush like in action. The only question is how much.
One thing about Cincinnati's offensive line is they better hope this isn't Super Bowl 50-esque Von Miller, so that could be a problem for the Bengals if they deal with that type of pass rush, which could be what's actually going to be happening. But that said, I do think that Cincinnati will find a way to score on this Rams defense. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of my takeaway. Do you guys think that Cincinnati should be like overly kind of concerned? And I just want to hear your takeaway, because you were talking a little bit about your kind of like not skepticism, but sort of about the skepticism of how much this pass rush will actually influence Cincinnati.
I am skeptical because in the last 4 games we followed the Bengals for, including their 2 playoff games so far, it is not. Or sorry, I guess you could say their 2 playoff games so far has not been a problem. They like
3, right? Or because they faced Raiders in the wild
card. Oh, okay. Then yeah, you're right. I figured I was missing something. And there are 3 games, and then if you go back even to week 17 against the Chiefs, it doesn't matter. There was against the Titans, he was sacked 7 times. We can talk about Ryan Tannehill all we want, but
9 times actually, even more.
9. Yeah, you're telling me like. There has to be like, it's one thing to get a sack as a statistic. The part that really makes a sack matter is because it causes you to lose yards, lose a down, and basically throw away your game plan. So Joe Burrow, again, has not been really impacted by those sacks. He got 1 sack against the Kansas City Chiefs, which again have a good pass rush too. And that's really the thing for me. I feel like we've kind of had the same narrative about the Bengals pretty much the entire playoffs about their offensive line. And so far, I've yet to see it actually tangibly cause them any sort of problems. Their offensive line objectively did not cause them any problems against Kansas City on an actual large level. You could maybe point to the sack that he had. Other than that, Tyrann Mathieu even said this after the game, that Joe Burrow clearly watched a lot of film, the way he danced out on 3rd down from us and got a first. So that's why I said, like, I think he's adapted to it. And honestly, if they want to get 2 or 3 sacks, that's fine. But if he's still throwing like 300, 400 yards a game, it doesn't really matter to me.
Okay. One more question, and then we get to the prediction part. We're almost there. So which quarterback has more riding on this game, Matthew Stafford or Joe Burrow?
Oh, it's got to be Matthew Stafford, right? Just because of the story he's had, right? He's joining the league in 2009. Like, he's spent all this time in the league, but most of those years were in Detroit, where he wasn't really able to do much of anything, even though individually he may have been like pretty good. But I mean, it was the Lions then, so I think that pretty much says enough. Especially given all that, being able to win a Super Bowl now, especially when they do have home field, and it's the 2nd straight year when they got that with the home team hosting the Super Bowl. So for Joe Burrow, that's not to say that Joe Burrow doesn't have a lot riding on it, but Joe Burrow's got a lot more time, right? He's only like a couple years in the league, into the league, and he's got a future no matter what happens. So I got to go with Stafford on this one.
I gotta agree. I mean, like I said earlier, I think Matthew Stafford is set up to succeed here this time. I mean, I feel like in his Detroit days, he was a good quarterback on a pretty bad team. I mean, I can't even say average for Detroit. And this time it's a good quarterback on a really talented team. So, I mean, this is really a quarterback matchup of two former number 1 overall draft picks from 2009 and 2020. So it really, I think the pressure has to be on the one who was drafted in 2009. I mean, having had more experience in the league. And I mean, I know that this is essentially, this actually is both quarterbacks' first trip to the Super Bowl. So I think for the game, nerves are going to be pretty high for both teams, especially Joe Burrow, considering he's young. And I know Joe Burrow's won a national championship, but with LSU, and so has Jamar Chase, that same team. But, you know, the national championship game in college is not the same as the Super Bowl. So I definitely have to go with Matthew Stafford. And as you said, Rohan, Joe Burrow's got so many more years ahead of him. As long as he's injury free, I'm sure he'll come back to the big game again.
Yeah, I mean, just really quickly, I'm going to steal a little bit of Rohan's thunder here. The betting odds for this game are plus 170 Cincinnati, minus 200
170.
Rams.
It's 170
Yeah,
because
so,
it was 160 a little while ago. So I guess the betting markets have kind of moved in that time.
170 and they're minus 200. So I think that kind of says it all for me in terms of who has more riding on this.
Before I even looked at the betting odds, I actually thought it was 170 like a few days ago. And then I was informed that the odds are 160. So I guess now they're back to 170.
These odds are always going to be fluctuating depending on like the money that's coming in for the game. So just keep in mind, like it could still change going forward. Like it's about
the perceived win probability.
So it will still likely keep fluctuating this upcoming week. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really look at it right now and just say that's going to be the final.
But yeah, I mean, the Rams are still a 4-point favorite. I don't think the spread has changed. So the Rams are favored by 4. Over under on this is 48.5. So take that for what you will.
I guess when I took this question, it was kind of from last year's template when it was like Brady and Mahomes. And at the time, like, I guess you had like more of like there was actually more of like a discussion here. So I kind of looked back and I'm like, yeah, this question this year doesn't make as much sense as it did last year. Because last year was like Brady and Mahomes, right? Like Mahomes having a chance for another Super Bowl, Brady winning with a different team. But like this year, it's kind of like Stafford versus Joe Burrow. So I agree with you guys. Like I would say Stafford has more, like, because I mean, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, and I also don't think he's like an elite quarterback. But here's the thing, right? If he wins the Super Bowl this year and he has a couple more great seasons, then you could kind of make a case.
Yeah,
that
like
probably a Hall of Famer.
his name will be up there with like with Big Ben, with Aaron Rodgers. Like he'll join that club if he wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he could be a Hall of Famer if he wins. I mean, the thing with Burrow, which I will caution, is like oftentimes we do say, oh, he's young, they'll be back. And we've seen a lot of great young quarterbacks kind of never make it back to the Super Bowl after they
Cam
lose.
Newton.
Not just Cam Newton. Like, I mean, yeah, Cam Newton, like who else? Like Matt Ryan, and even
Russell Wilson after Super Bowl 49.
Russell Wilson, and I mean, even if you win, right? Like, we don't know if they'll be back. Like Aaron Rodgers, like I mean, 2010, Drew Brees in 2009.
I'd even argue Colin Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick as well. Like, there's a lot of like quarterbacks who kind of like after that one quarterback, like that one Super Bowl appearance, they never make it back.
Joe Flacco.
Yeah, Joe Flacco. Yeah, so I mean, I will be cautious and say, like, I mean, Burrow's still absolutely. I mean, just because it's the second season he made it, there's no guarantee like what'll happen in 3-4 years, especially with that Cincinnati ownership. I don't trust them really. Mike Brown, I don't think he's a very good owner. I think they've just sort of been fortunate and like kind of got into a terrific situation, not because of him, but because of the office that they were able to sort of develop and like draft. So I don't know. I mean, I will say, like, I mean, obviously Stafford is the answer I would give, but I would also be cautious in saying whether or not Burrow, we see him back in the Super Bowl, because we've seen it happen before. Like, I mean, a lot of promising young talent, and it just they never are able to get back to that stage for whatever reason, right? So I will be cautious there. And okay, now the fun part, always the part where all of our listeners really, really care about the most, the predictions. So let's go with the guy who actually got the Super Bowl prediction right last week first. Actually, let's go with him last, because save up the drama. So let's go with the guy who actually got both of them wrong last week first. So Uja, you are 0-6. Sorry to pick on you, but just for fun, we're just
well,
So yeah, you're 0-6, right? So let's go. Who are you picking?
Yeah. Before I go, I'm going to say, yes, I'm 0-6, but I did predict that this Rams 49ers game would end 20-17. I just had the winner wrong. So
to our listeners, whatever Ujan says, just bet the opposite.
Maybe a contrarian betting.
All right.
Good, Ujan, just messing with you. Go ahead.
So in my alternative world of what seems like you all will not listen to, I will say that the Rams will win because I think the Rams defense is better, and ultimately the Rams offense is going to be too much for the Bengals defense to handle. I mean, we said that. I know I said that last time against Kansas City, but I'm gonna go for it again. I keep betting against the Bengals, so everyone's probably gonna say the Bengals, and I'd be totally okay with that. But I'm gonna go with the Rams, 30-24.
Yeah, I mean the Bengals, they've had an incredible story. I mean, surprised that they made it this far, and they've got a lot of fight in them. I would not discount the Bengals because I mean the Bengals they got a lot of potent weapons. I mean Joe Burrow. By now we know what he can do, but I mean the holes that I would kind of poke in the Bengals is like the offensive line, that and the fact that they're a little over reliant on the passing game, and the defense is also probably not like near the top. I mean, they're 24th in pass completion percentage allowed by opponents. But that said, the Rams are 26th on that metric, so not really much better over here. So to me, that suggests a high scoring game. And given all of that information, I got to go with the team that's going to have all the energy behind them. With the Rams playing at home, I think it's going to be a lot closer than what the betting markets are predicting. I think it's going to be closer to the 4-point spread. I actually am going to pick the Rams 34-31 in overtime on this one. So that puts me, I'm predicting it's closer than the spread of 4 points, and that puts me over on the over-under, because the over-under for this one is 40.5. So I'm predicting 34-31. So that will put me at 65. And I gave you my reasons why. My reasons I'm saying that is that both defenses are now okay at best, but potent offenses. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game.
Okay, so no, I mean those are good reasons. I mean, so for me, obviously, so the Rams are like a terrific team this year. Like they have the better offense, they have like kind of everything going their way, and they're playing at home in the Super Bowl. But that said, there's just something about the Cincinnati Bengals team that I can't discount anymore. I just can't do it. It doesn't make sense how it's happened, but normally when a team has such a bad offensive line, that's usually the detriment to the quarterback. Last year, Joe Burrow was out for the season due to a bad offensive line. He broke his ankle. I think he tore his ACL last year. He missed the whole year due to a bad offensive line. But they still didn't really fix up the offensive line. Their defense is still not that great. It's a decent defense that has really stepped it up. I just can't pick against them anymore. I did pick them to beat Vegas in the wild card round, but I picked against them against Tennessee and the Chiefs. And Joe Burrow, there's just something about this guy. He kind of has the swag, and sort of reminds me of another quarterback who retired recently, who wasn't the most athletically gifted guy, but when his name was called late in the game, he always found a way to do it. I think you guys know who we're talking about. So he just sort of has that in him at this point. And by the way, that same quarterback in his second season took this team to a Super Bowl. So against the Rams. So are we seeing history repeat itself? Probably not. I don't think Joe Burrow's going to be going to 10 Super Bowls. But I do think he's going to get the Super Bowl championship for Cincinnati. So I'm going Bengals 21, Rams 16 in the upset. I don't know. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. I should be picking the Rams, but something special is going on with the Cincinnati Bengals team. And I don't know. Sometimes I just can't discount that anymore. So I'm going, Bengals 21, Rams 16. So but that said, the person who's really knows what's going to happen is about to give his prediction now. So
let's give it to the crystal ball.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Let's hear the actual prediction. What's going to happen? We don't even need to watch the Super Bowl anymore, right? After hearing his prediction at this point, so we don't even need to watch.
A lot of pressure to heap on my shoulders, I guess. And I've thought about this a lot the last few weeks, and And again, you have to weigh the pros and cons. I think that we've talked about here, and obviously I'm stalling for some dramatic effect. But at the end of the day, I'll go out and say it. I was with the Bengals. I said they'd beat Tennessee away. I said they'd beat Kansas City away, and now I'm going to say they're going to beat LA away because, first of all, I said this before. I'll say it again. It does not matter to me what their offensive line will do against LA because they've overcome that and has not been an issue for them in their gameplay the last 2-3 games. The second thing is, we talk a lot about the defense. The Bengals and Rams defense have both kind of averaged around 20 points a game the last basically 2 months, like the last few games of the regular season as well as in the playoffs. They both kind of average around the same number of points. So I do think that the practical kind of functionality, it won't be too different. But again, I think it's what you're saying. There's something really special about Joe Burrow, his kind of coolness in these big moments, his ability to really find players. And I think Jamar Chase is absolutely exceptional. He's been a top 4 player in the NFL this season. So I'm going to predict actually a 25-24 scoreline. I think this is going to be a game actually where I do see the Rams kind of going in front, kind of similar to the narrative we saw against Kansas City. They're probably going to maybe go 1 or 2 scores up. And I think we're going to see maybe a couple field goals to start the game for the Bengals. And they're going to really pick it up in the second half. And I am expecting to see a few more mistakes from Matt Stafford under pressure. And I want to wrap this up by saying that it'll be 22-24. Bengals get the ball back with maybe a minute to go, get it to the 40, and my man Evan McPherson kicks a Super Bowl winning field goal. So I'm going to say 25-24.
Wow. So you're actually slightly over on the over-under. Over-under's 40.5 and you're 49.
Slightly. I do agree with you that this is going to be a game where the offenses show up big. I don't see the Bengals or the Rams really going above 30 points because I think they both do have the capacity to get held to punts or stuff. But I think overall, late in the game, I think we're going to see the Cincinnati take over just like we saw against Kansas City.
Okay, so 2 of us picked Cincinnati, 2 of us pick LA, and I'd just like to emphasize just one more thing. Like, yes, the Rams
split panel, and in a little over a week, we're gonna know where the smart money went and where the dumb money went. So,
I'd just like to also say one thing quickly. Like, I mean, yes, the Super Bowl is in LA, but for the Super Bowl, I feel it's going to be kind of like a split crowd, regardless, because Bengals. There are going to be a lot of Bengals supporters there, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Passionate fans, and I wouldn't be surprised if they've traveled there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Super Bowl, and their team hasn't made it since like 1988, 1989. It's also going to be very interesting because Chris Collinsworth, who will be calling the Super Bowl, is a former Cincinnati Bengals receiver back in the 80s when the Bengals went to 2 Super Bowls and they lost both to San Francisco 49ers. So it'll be pretty cool to see that too. So yeah, but regardless, yeah, we will be back next week kind of with another episode discussing some Super Bowl related topics. But until then, everyone, have a great rest of your week. And yeah, we will be back next weekend, probably Saturday because Super Bowl's on Sunday. We will be back likely Saturday to have another episode, kind of previewing and leading up to the game next Sunday. But until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy this week of Super Bowl hype.
Enjoy, guys. Peace.